Because a lot of times you can have the website and the logo and all the beautiful stuff, right? But if the cash is not rolling in, you basically don't have the business.
What a business is, eventually it's about doing a transaction value for value.
If you have a unicorn business idea, you get a lot of support.
Biggest lie out there that there is something like $1 million business idea, right? There is no $1 million business idea, there is just $1 million execution.
It's a well-known fact that 95% of entrepreneurs fail in when they just start in the business. And we believe that's because people just don't know what process to follow. And there is actually a process and a system from step 1 to, all the steps down the line. But people try to jump the first steps and usually start with building their websites, creating a logo, thinking about their tone of voice, how they're going to communicate with people, right? They think about, colors that represent them. And that makes people feel like they have a business, whilst actually it doesn't mean that they have a business, because a lot of times you can have the website and the logo and all the beautiful stuff, right? But if the cash is not rolling in, you basically don't have the business, right? So today we kind of wanted to talk, and especially having you guys with us today, to discuss what was your experience, what we see by working with our clients, right? What are kind of the common mistakes that people make when they start the business for the first time, and what steps are actually required to take in order to build a business that brings you money in the bank.
Right.
So maybe
that's what we want.
Exactly. So maybe the word to you guys, just introduce yourselves, right? So we tell our viewers who you are and why you're here with us today.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having us. This is so amazing. Love talking to you guys. So we're Anastasia and Tomer from Generation Nomads. What we do is we help aspiring and new freedompreneurs go from just a vague idea, as you were saying, to getting their first client so that they can actually start the business journey. We're working mostly with people that do this because they want a lifestyle of freedom. They love to travel. They want to work from anywhere. And they want to use the skills that they bring with them, whether it is from the professional background or maybe a personal transformation that they achieved, and turn that into something that can help others and really create a business that they're not only passionate about, but that gives them the freedom to work from anywhere and do the things that they want. And of course, financial freedom.
Of course, right? Because at least it needs to pay the bills, right?
Exactly.
That's eventually the most important.
Right. Yeah, we don't want to build expensive hobbies, but we actually really want to create something that you're excited about, that you cannot wake up to, but also indeed that gives you that cash in the bank. And I love the introduction that you did with 95% of businesses fail. And totally agree. We see those shiny things in front of us, what we see online that entrepreneurs have, but there is so much going on in the background that I'm excited to touch upon today.
Nice.
Awesome.
Okay, so just, I don't know if you wanted to add a couple words to that or if we just...
No, well, I think that, just to add on what Anastasia was saying about the topic, indeed, that so many people jump into that thing. They're like, I want to start a business. And then they indeed start with the logos and all these things. And it just becomes very chaotic. And indeed, you miss this kind of essential thing of what a business is. Eventually, it's about doing a transaction value for value, usually value for money, because usually you sell something and you get money in return. But that's basically the thing, is creating value for someone else, potential clients, and getting something in return for that. That's what a business is about. And there is a systematic approach to validating and testing that. And would be super happy to talk about it today. We're really looking forward to that.
Yeah, and so exciting also to see where we think alike and maybe where the differences are from our programs, because what we do is we have Freedom Business Mentorship, and we're also helping people get started and actually get to their first clients. And I think many of the things that we'll be talking about today will be quite similar, but probably everybody has their nuances in the story. So let's
Absolutely.
dive in.
100%. And if you guys disagree to something that we say, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's good
see.
that audiences hear it not just from one person, right?
Yeah.
But from multiple parties, and that's actually a thing. It's not just one person, because there's so much out there. And Olga said in the beginning, 95% of businesses fail. Partially, there's a half truth to that, I guess, because you fail, but then you restart and then you succeed or something like that. But then also a lot of people actually just stop, and that's just because they don't have this knowledge and understanding. If you're coming from a different background, from a corporate, from an employee kind of background, you don't know this. You just have these shiny ideas and things in your head. But then when we ourselves got immersed, and we were the same way, right? And we did all the wrong things. So I'll talk maybe a little bit about that. But
That's why we feel entitled, talking about it today.
We did all the dumb shit.
Yeah, so dumb shit.
Exactly.
And we started working with more tech startups here as we moved to Portugal, and we were part of the tech incubator systems, and we understood, wow, what these tech founders, if you have a unicorn business idea, you get a lot of support. There's people who tell you processes, methodologies, help you with tools, give you access to software, give you access to mentors, and there's so much support system that you get that as a normal person just wanting to start a passion business, it's usually not there.
Yeah.
And that's why we were like, oh my God, we need to shift from coaching to become an ecosystem like that. And we moved to Metta Startuo Studio, which is trying to now replicate
Cool.
a tech startup incubator into that.
Nice.
Yeah,
And
because I feel it's really if you're a lifestyle business owner, right? So if you're a coach, if you're a yoga teacher, mindfulness professional of any sort, if you are a creative, you have this very scattered bits and pieces of information everywhere, but you never have the holistic overview of actually what is the process, right? That leads to making money in the business, to stabilizing the income, right? And then to scaling the business. Nobody actually tells you. Everybody's just screaming from everywhere, hey, come, you need the copyright, now you need the ads, now you need something. And people just get super overwhelmed with that.
Exactly. Too many.
I think also a big thing, why it's good to be part of such an ecosystem and being part of having this kind of guidance and mentorship is also because there is so much out there. There is, and a lot of it is correct, everybody has their secret formulas and things, but eventually...
they all work.
They all do eventually, because eventually what it is about is indeed about going through those failures and keep pushing through. And that's where you really need somebody to kind of hold your hand a bit through the process, because it isn't an easy process. It's a lot of bumping against walls, and even when you get the perfect system, it's it's something you really got to go through. And I think that's where I have really appreciated when we took on mentorship and coaching for ourselves to help us. That's what really allowed us to kind of break through those kind of barriers that you otherwise you're you try this thing that somebody says, the 5 steps to do this, and you try it and then it doesn't work, and you're like, why doesn't it work for me? It worked for all the other people, they said, but
Apparently.
But I think it's also to the point that there is a lot of advice, like you said, and it can be the right advice, but maybe for the different stage of the business that you are at.
As well,
A lot of times it works, but not for the stage where you, for example, just starting out. So for somebody who has a 7-figure business, it's completely different strategies that need to be in place versus when you're just starting from scratch.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think also one thing that we see coming back to, this point of 95% of businesses fail, the statistic that is just, catching you and you're like, oh my God, is it at all worthwhile to start, right? I find, and that's the first thing that I like to demystify also for clients, is that I find it the biggest lie out there that there is something like a $1 million business idea, right? There is no $1 million business idea. There is just $1 million execution. And I think what we're so brainwashed almost also from a corporate background, or we're also coming from a tech background and tech startups and, incubators and a lot of, innovation, where business ideas are being assessed based on, the tech value, is there investment potential from, investors, etc. That you kind of think, okay, before you start, you need to have this brilliant idea, and otherwise you are maybe bound to fail. And it's actually, not really in the maybe even exact steps and the order of steps that you do, but it's the resilience and persistence and kind of, getting up one more time than you fall, that really gets to this success at the end of the day, because eventually I think failure is just part of it. It's the same, it's a destination on the same path, success and failure. It's just that success is a little bit further away.
100%. But maybe like let's just talk about the process, right? Since like I think like we would love to touch on the 4 components today. So which is basically having a niche. And like I think it's a very interesting conversation in regards to whether you need or need not to niche down when you're just starting out. Talking about having a compelling sales offer for your specific audience. Talking about how to market yourself, like in terms of the messaging and the way you put your message out there, and then talking about closing the clients as well, right? Because it's also a big step where we see at least a lot of our clients fail or not being able to close the sale and the end of the process.
Maybe just before we shift into this process, I just wanted to acknowledge that this mindset thing came up naturally because we've gone through this, right? I love that you bring it up. Maybe we should probably dedicate a whole nother episode to the mindset piece, right? Because it's huge. Mindset is 80%. If you have all the tools, but you're like, nah, it didn't work, and you give up, you will not succeed. The one who has the mindset and the resilience and all of that to continue and figure it out, they will succeed eventually. It's just a matter of time. That's the mindset, right? So there's so much in there. But yeah, for today, I think then let's dive into
I think we need both the mindset and the process, right?
Absolutely.
Which would make it easier.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so who wants to start with the niche?
So maybe you just start with the niche. Yeah.
Okay, so
you kind of volunteered yourself.
Okay. So what is niche? Maybe before we talk about niching, so it's like basically what do you sell to whom, in what format, to achieve what goal, in a way. That's kind of how I think about like what is niche, and happy to hear different definitions. And yeah, there's some common mistakes that we've noticed, at least on our side, and we've gone through them. It's like, for one, like staying too generic because of the fear of, missing out on potential, which turns out to be often the very opposite. And then also choosing a niche where maybe your ego, maybe it's like the shiny thing out there and it's a new cool thing, and you just, I want to just do that, but you don't have the authority in that space. You don't have the network and the access to to this kind of clients, and it's also something that will hold you back. So those are kind of some very common mistakes. So and what I would define as a niche, and the way we talk about it is that usually, in order to avoid this when just starting out, niche down 3 to 4 times. Better 4 times, where it's like, not just a fitness coach, but a fitness coach for women, not just fitness coach for women, but for women postpartum, not just for women postpartum, but who want a very specific methodology like Tabata or quick high intensity workout, whatever it is. And then the person out there who is that person, that woman, she'll be like, oh my God, like if that person, I don't even know that person, but they say exactly what I want, probably they're pretty good at that, versus, I don't know if there's Tony Robbins in the coaching world. He just says, I coach you. You're like, okay, yeah, this guy can coach me. Yeah, but if I just say Carsten can coach you, they're like, what the fuck? But if I tell them exactly this, they're like, oh, probably he's thought about that,
Yeah.
So like, I don't know if like opening it up maybe to the rest of the table.
Yeah, I love, actually, I haven't been thinking about it this way, like you were saying, 4 times niching down. And it's actually really, I'm kind of intrigued to think about, okay, how many steps are we actually taking to niche down? So it's a new perspective to look at it. But I agree, definitely. I think it's kind of understanding who you are trying to help, right, with achieving what. So what's the transformation, but then also bringing in like your specific way of solving the problem, right? Because there are so many different solutions to one problem, and it's kind of being able to communicate how you are actually bringing value to the table, and that this person can naturally immediately raise their hands. Like that's how we like to, talk to clients about. It's like, okay, can you communicate your message in a certain way that somebody immediately can raise their hand and say, that's me? So whenever you're leaving, and that's kind of a little bit of an assessment, maybe criteria, when you're leaving room for interpretation, you're kind of losing people because they have to do the thinking for you, right? You have to make it easy.
It makes me think about Open Coffee event. It's just the networking event that we run here locally every month. And I don't know, like if you guys notice, like a lot of times, so the coaches, I think, are the worst. So they come in, and usually the introduction is exactly the same. So people they're repeating the same thing, and there is no difference. So I get very bored usually when I listen to this, start looking at my phone. It's like, okay, because everybody's just like, oh, like I help people reach the highest potential. I was like,
Yeah.
what the fuck are you talking about? And I was like, oh, like to get their power back or be aligned with their values and be the most authentic leader. And I was like, this tells me nothing about whom exactly you help, with what exactly, what does it mean to live up to my highest potential? I don't even know what it means for me, right? So it leaves a lot of room for interpretation. It's very vague, a lot of grand promises, which don't kind of correlate to my everyday problems that I have. So I don't understand how you're going to help me specifically.
Yeah.
So what's in it for me? Am I actually the one you can help? I don't know, right? And if I'm confused as a potential customer, I don't buy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's like part of the point of this is also going beyond just demographics and really going a bit deeper into understanding who your target persona or avatar is. So basically really understanding what are they really feeling, what they're going through. And it's really like, that's part of the niche as well. It's really like figuring out who is your type of client, let's say.
Yeah.
No,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So many ideas. No, a common pitfall I think that happens, which I see when working with our clients, is that people like to focus on the sexy messaging before they actually understand their ideal client problem or transformation. And then I think it happens that we're very quickly going into those fancy, good sounding words like, we help you build your dream life and, get your power back and, do all of these amazing things, because we're approaching it from kind of immediately like marketing language, maybe without actually going deeper and figuring out in a very simple, let's say, statement, what is it on earth that I'm actually helping somebody to do, and then putting in the language of your ideal client and maybe beautifying it a little bit to make it a bit sparkling, to put like the glitter on top. But it's actually really diving deeper, and I think that's what with the diving deeper, that is what Carsten was earlier also saying, like being too vague, too broad, too non-specific, kind of, and missing out on that. Like if I can just refer back to like a specific example that we were working with a client with, and that's also the thing, because it also happens to really people that are very experienced in their field, because they kind of see so basically it's not just a beginner mistake, right? It's also you can have like really the top skills and experience in your field, but you're kind of maybe used to communicating it in a different way. Like, for example, we were working with a therapist, and she was great in what she does. Like, she was accredited therapist, working with teenagers, helping them through anxiety and stress and different disorders, like psychological disorders and behavioral disorders. And she wanted to turn her experience into an online course. So now she has to suddenly market her product herself, because before that she got clients through referrals, right? So they go to the GP, let's say, or in the school, they notice that something is off, and then they would refer the potential patients to her. So she never faced kind of that, marketing world and putting her skills and her value into a message. And then she was staying on this broad level of like, I help, teenagers overcome psychological disorders. And it's like, okay, so what exactly are we talking about? Also, we're talking probably to the parents of those children, right? Because they are the buyers. So kind of understanding who is the buyer, who's the decision maker.
It's
and
kind
what
of
is
like
it?
looking at the wider ecosystem, who else is making decision on the purchase, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it can be the parents if it is teenagers. If you work in B2B, right, like within organizations, there are so many different stakeholders that take part in the decision making, right? So mapping it out, to understand, like Tomer was saying as well, like who the client is, it's basically almost like waking up with them, taking a shower with them, drinking their freaking coffee with them, right? To understand like what is their day like, where else they go, what are they thinking, what are their thoughts about the specific service that you're offering, what their thoughts need to be instead in order for them to buy from you, right? And really understanding this whole ecosystem, which is centered around your customer, right? But majority of times people don't take this customer-centric approach because people are concerned with themselves, right? And that's where like the first, I think like the mindset issue starts, because we're so consumed with how we will come across. What will people think about us? Do we have this like, I don't know, professional representation of us that we forget about the poor customer that actually needs help, right? And I think, like, I don't know, Carsten, if you want to take like a couple of minutes explaining how we usually do it, like in our process to understand the customer. So basically talking about the customer interviews, and then maybe hearing from you guys, like what's your take on it, and how do you usually approach it in your programs and together with your clients?
Would love to hear.
Also, just wanted to add one thing, because you mentioned earlier the big shiny marketing words, right, that people use. And then you said it could also happen to experienced people. And what came up from me was like, yeah, because you talk about this stuff all the time and you're further educating yourself. Like, I mean, we did a coach training study after, everyone goes through a life transforming journey, and it's deep, and you have this spiritual consciousness journey that you go through for, if it's a good study, usually it's like a year or something. You've been bombarded with this, but the rest of the world hasn't necessarily and hasn't gone through. So when you say take your power back, it actually means a lot to a lot of people who have done this, but not to people who you still need to kind of educate and convince on this. And you need to be practical in the way you talk. And that's kind of maybe where, how we usually go about it, is to just talk to people, right? So like, it's difficult to talk to people. You know, when we worked in Adidas, like I always looked at the customer insights department, and it was like 30, 40, 50 people. And I was like, and they work with agencies and spend so much money on customer research and all of that. And I was like, wow, how can you as a small you don't have reason. But actually it's very simple if you niche down. So if you niche down 3-4 times and you choose people who are not random people out there, but people who either it's people like you, that's a good chance you have more like you in your network, or people in your communities, in your circles, hobbies, professional, whatever that you've grown up with that are in your network, then it becomes very easy when they're there, because then you have those people who you can just, know them, or know someone who knows them, and you can quickly talk to 10 of them, 20 of them. And if you ask them the same questions, and what we usually do is a standard set of questions that we give to people, like a cheat sheet, and they go through that. And there's a way to analyze that, but like kind of top line, the main thing is the pains. What are you, within the topic that we're talking about here, framing the conversation, this is like, what's your pains, what's your struggles, what's difficult, what are your desires, like what are your wishes for, like if you could have anything and without, how would you solve these things? In what format? And, what's the pricing, which is always a tricky one, but when you have these answers, you will see very quickly, actually, just talking to 10, 20 people, there's a lot of similarities. Randomly, the same exact price point keeps coming up, and then you just need to figure out, okay, how can I make this work for me too? They want that price point, they want those results. Okay, cool. Now it's my challenge to creatively think about how can I get enough money for my time and everything that I can support myself and what I want as well. So, this is kind of the process, I guess, how, once you have the niche defined, 3-4 steps down, something in your network, something like that you have expertise in, obviously. So you have. And I think
that this, by the way, key, right? Because like a lot of people choose the niche where like they don't have the authority or they don't have easy access to customers. It's like, I don't know, like sometimes it happens like also like, I don't know, coaches, right? Like somebody takes a coaching education, then they're like, oh, I'm going to do executive coaching. I was like, okay, like, have you been an executive yourself? No. What's your network? Oh, like mid-senior level management. I was like, who on earth from the executive suite gonna coach with you if you have zero experience in this, right? And you can't support them with their problems because they will never, like, even if you can, theoretically, because yes, of course we can, like everybody's human, we can coach them on human stuff, but it doesn't give you the authority that these people need in order to trust that you are the expert, right? So it's kind of like always a red flag, right? It's like for people, I think, if you choose the niche where you don't have easy access to people, like this is a red flag. Like pay attention.
It's understandable that you would go there. I just wanted, because remember when just in terms of being vague, you at some point had on LinkedIn like Joy Soul Coach.
Oh yeah, I remember. That's embarrassing.
Right, in the very early days.
Don't tell anyone about this.
And we were like, I had one entrepreneur who I was working with. Let's be coaches for entrepreneurs. That's cool. No entrepreneurs in our network at the time, So also we now built, like we invested 2-3 years. That's why we're kind of like, at the stage where we're at only after 4 years, because we had to build a big network. For 2 years, we invested in getting into the startup ecosystem, getting into entrepreneurs, working with them. And there was not the massive money you would make in this period. It's more an investment into a network, into something. And then now we're starting to see really nice results coming from that, but it was a journey, and we could have made this journey so much faster or financed it so much nicer if we had just, it's rather than investing into this journey, we could have made money along the journey, if we had focused in the meantime on something where we had the authority and access to. So just wanted to say, like, to everyone out there, it's normal. This happens.
Yeah.
So what's your guys' point of view on that, like when the whole customer research phase?
Yeah, so I think also coming to your point, I thought it was really interesting, like the executive example. It's like, I think what you often see is that you come again with this grand vision, like, oh, that sounds good. I would love to do this. But then it's actually, you kind of, I think, expect maybe even too much from yourself, and you don't fully acknowledge the value that you can bring to the table, right? So why, like, let's say in this mid-senior level position, right, there are probably career starters or whatever that need the coaching necessary to get to that medium position so that they have a chance to go towards executive level, right? It's kind of also with the niching, I think one part of the exercise that we're doing is also looking into what exactly have you accomplished, like really what are the credentials that you're bringing with you, right? So apart from your network, kind of what is it that you have achieved so that you feel comfortable in helping somebody who is just a few steps behind, right? Because it doesn't have to be like, a million, a million steps behind, but you also, I think, take on too much pressure onto yourself, because that's what radiates then when you're going out and trying to sell. If you don't believe your own value and you're into your own offer, then that's something that people can almost magically smell just because you're showing up with a different energy, right?
How many steps back do you go to get that confidence?
I think it can be, I think, subjective, because people are, depending on what will bring that confidence up for them, right? If they feel confident, let's say, they have accomplished, let's say they have left a career that they were super burned out from. Then, maybe they don't want to, let's say, help somebody, let's say clients that are coming to work with us, they have, for example, made the switch to go to starting a remote business, right? That's where they are right now. They don't need to help others that are burnt out in their career and going through burnout to start a business, because they themselves are in the process, right? But what they can do is actually help somebody maybe with getting the confidence to hand in or to write, I don't know, their resignation letter, apply for a dream job, or something that they have done, that they feel more confident in accomplishing, and where they can come up with, coming back to the point before, like really a step-by-step plan or the essential ingredients to make that shift, right? That transformation.
And I think like this is like very interesting as well, like to the point that sometimes people have this like 100% vision, right? But you can't deliver it from the beginning, right? So you can start with just delivering the 5% or the 10%, right? With the thought in mind, I'm gonna grow it to the 100%. But right now, where I actually can help people is this first 5% or this first 10%, right? It's like we would love to help people to like scale to 7-figure businesses. We're not there ourselves yet, right? But like even in the beginning, when we were just starting out, like what could I help people with? Like for example, like finding their business idea. Like I was not even like talking about, I don't know, getting first clients or getting money or something, but just finding the business idea, you know? And this you could help, because if you figure it out for yourself, you can do it for others, right?
Exactly.
But as you grow, this percentage will increase, right? And your customers will grow together with you, and that's okay, right? But just like understanding that, yes, you can't do the 100% yet, have this vision, help on the 5, on the 10% first.
Totally.
And there will be bumps in the road, like the microphone, as you were just saying. Sorry, I had to.
The metaphor. That was genius.
But I think we're switching almost to the offer already, and what we're offering, and I love that as well. Like not to be afraid to niche down, but also not to be afraid to just pick a very small piece of the puzzle of the problem to gain confidence. And I think that's also in the beginning we were like, hey, do this, and then we naturally kind of learned along the way, okay, let's start here, and then we step by step expanded from there. So when I don't know, maybe you guys start on this one, like offer, like what do we offer to people in what way and with what format and what pricing? Like how do you help people? Because it's like always a very sensitive question in the beginning. How do you work with people coming up with that? If anyhow.
Pricing, I guess, is we get a lot of questions about pricing as well. So that's like always like very interesting question, of course. But just before we dive into pricing, I think like just to, like the offer that you create should actually still be based on what people are looking for. So it's coming back like what we touched upon with the niching. I mean, it's really understanding your potential customer and understanding what they really want, whether they're really struggling with, and to really go through those interviews and go through those conversations to really get to the point of what is it that you could offer to them that would really be valuable to them, because that's the most important thing about the offer. Is it valuable? Once it is valuable, how much you price for that value. And pricing can be even more complicated, because you can price something low for a certain reason, or you can price it super high and make it like exclusive or something. There's also other things that come with pricing. But I think the first thing is to really establish what is the value that somebody is at all willing to pay for.
I like this two-step approach, right? First, just figure out what is even the thing that's worth solving and what do people want. And then the format and the pricing you figure out as a second step.
Yeah, it's the vehicle, right? It's kind of how you're delivering the thing to your client. So how we like to start with is kind of, coming back to, okay, now you understand your niche, you understand the transformation that you want somebody to achieve, and you kind of know that your thing, that one thing, or that the specific way of how you're helping them to solve that, right? So, okay, let's package that up in, trying, because sometimes with the offer, I feel like this is where sometimes the overwhelm also starts, for people like, oh, but how do what is now the thing going to look like? What do I sell eventually, right? So and then we like to take it back again to this customer specific view of, okay, so let's take a step back and look into, if this is your client and they want to achieve result X, what are the steps that they need to go through in order to get there? And then how much time do you need to spend with them, or what do you need to give them in order to support them through this journey, right, to get to this result X? And once you have this first, that's how we like to do it, this first draft of, okay, this is what I need to take somebody through in terms of journey, we can look into the embodiment, as we call it, like, okay, how is that going to be delivered to them? So what is exactly the vehicle that will carry them from, point A to point B? And that's when we come in with, what is included in your offer and the features. But, as Tomer was also saying, like, every feature has to be linked back to a benefit, because there is no, and that actually brings me back to my past life, I almost like to say it, with, in the tech world, because what I saw a lot happening is this falling in love blindly with your solution. Yep. and trying to communicate.
Love that. They love all the
Everyone loves this.
Everyone loves this.
We love this.
The more features, if you get like only 5 features, you're not even in there. You gotta have like 100 feature, list.
Yeah, and
your
everything
features as well, right? The ones that you like.
Exactly, the ones that you're excited about that nobody else cares about. Now, this is now taking it to the extreme, but I think often it feels like, okay, the more I include, or, I need to have this and that's in place and that's in place. And then that leaves you with something that makes you feel overwhelmed and not knowing how to actually bring it towards the customer, right? And like kind of, okay, so how do I now implement it? Because what clients start with, let's take a coach, right? And then they want to start with a group program that has video modules and has a community of people that support each other. But let's say you're starting out with an audience of close to 10 people, then maybe, the group program is not the first thing that you do with a lot of, fancy, community support and stuff, because you're just making your life more difficult. Like, why not, to go and actually help one person achieve the transformation, go to another person, build your audience at the same time, and then, expand your offer. So kind of thinking back, okay, what is exactly my feature? How can I make it for myself as easy as possible to bring it to the market? And how can I effectively communicate it to that audience, because there is a clear benefit attached to that feature, right? So kind of bringing it back to the basic. And then when it comes to pricing, that's when, the big question marks start. And I know, there are different approaches to pricing. we always go with the value-based pricing approach. So kind of, and that's a little bit tricky because it's subjective, but it's kind of, what is the value for somebody if they achieve that transformation, right? How bad does somebody want? What is it worth it for them to actually?
And it doesn't have to be subjective if you ask them, right? Like it's like part of the customer interviews, right? They tell you this is what it's worth to me. This is what I would jump on without thinking about it. That's the actual price that's worth it to them. It may be worth a lot more if you think logically and calculate the hours spent by someone. But for them, this is the money they would be willing to spend on that. Yeah. And then it's just a matter of, okay, I don't need to guess it, I don't even need to be, at least the way we think about it, we don't need to be subjective, and it's there. They tell us also like the steps to get there. I love that you yes, it's actually just matters the result and how to get there. And you may be the expert who knows exactly how they need to get there. But they want some shiny thing that is not relevant for that journey, but they want it. They really want it and they think they need it. Yeah. So you got to integrate that feature for them. So they come in and then they see, oh, no, wait, there's all the other stuff that I'm getting. That's actually, but they buy because of that, maybe.
I think like
the website.
To this point, it's like it's more the difference between what they think they need versus what they actually need, right? And there is this difference like on the side. So it's basically sell to them what they think they need. The post-purchase give them what they actually need, right? Because like majority of people don't even know what they need, but they think they know they need this. And that's why I think like there is
they need a website.
Yeah, the website.
Exactly. But I think like there is the beauty of customer interviews in it, because like when you actually go on the calls with people, right? Like get them on Zoom, get them like on the phone, whatever that is, listen into their language. And that's why like maybe there will be the bridge like down the line towards the marketing, right? Because you don't need to guess anything. You don't need to describe stuff in the way you think is getting to them. You just need to listen to what they say, right? And when we listen to what they say, how do they describe their problem? Do they describe it in the same language you would do? Or it has a different description? How would they describe the like wished for solution? Why they're not there yet? What was in their way before? Have they tried anything to solve it? Like why did it work? Why it didn't, right? Like how long do they think is required for them to get support in order to get to the like wished for outcome, right? So like asking them about the format, the lengths, and then asking them like, okay, if the perfect solution was delivered to you in exactly this perfect format, how much would you be willing to invest in it, right? And once they say it, like you have the price point, right? And then it's kind of like what Carsten said, then it's up to you to also build for that you actually, that the price point is profitable as well. What needs to be included from the key features that they said and what is nice to have and you don't need to include, right? But it removes all the pricing drama. It removes all the guessing what features need to be there or don't need to be there. Removes all the drama about like what do I communicate and what do I talk about, in what language, how do I describe it. So it removes everything, right? So for us,
we spent months trying to figure out how to communicate something and it didn't come. And we spent so many posts and no return. And just at some point, we just interviewed people, and it was like, oh, it can be so easy.
It's basically like it's really because like we like hit a very like steep kind of like low beginning of last year with like our sales. So like for a couple of months, we were getting close to zero, and we're like, what happened? Something happened with the market. We used to get clients on repeat, and now the people are not coming, right? So we had to go back to the drawing board. Like we had to jump on the interviews with people, and we interviewed more than 100 people. And then we built the service for that. And then we jumped from 0 months to 21K months, like this, right? Because we built for what people told us they wanted. So we just built for that. And then we went back to them and said like, okay, now we have it. Do you want it? Yeah. And we had like 15 clients like this.
And that's, I think, go ahead.
That brings us to, or like that's something that we were actually discussing this morning, coincidentally.
So it's like people discussing these things just casually in the morning.
Monday is our strategy, like our CEO day. So we're running these things.
Yeah, so for us, it was like we were looking back at when we launched our first coaching program. I guess you could call it that way. We never ran it, but we still launched it. We did bring like all our experiences from our corporate careers. We were like, okay, we got to interview people. We got to get all this feedback and everything, and we did that on a not 100 people scale, but I think we had like 5 people in total. We did like in-depth interviews. We then packaged this thing up as an offer, and we put it out there. I don't even remember if we had a price for it. I think we didn't even show the price yet. We just kind of like put it out there, like, okay, here it is, like who's interested, talk to us. And then nothing came back. And we were like, at that point, we were kind of like, okay, probably this offer actually doesn't work. And we kind of left it, and then at that time, we just kind of dropped the idea. But
After
looking back,
spending 5 weeks, working on the
it out and
website.
I was just gonna
working
be
on
like, oh, but you guys did it pretty scrappy, so well done.
we spent 5 weeks on this idea, and then we kind of like dropped it. And then, today we were like talking, we're like, actually, you know what? Like the thing is that you have to keep, your offer is never final. Your offer is something that's all the time evolving and all the time changing. The people are changing, the world is changing, everything is changing. And, like even if you spend 5 weeks after interviews and everything and you put that thing out there, that it's not final, it's only it's never final. I mean, when people buy it, then it's a proof, okay, people see the value and they're willing to pay for it. But at the same time, like you say, after a while something changes and the world is a bit different again, and then you have to adapt again, and that makes life also more fun.
That also beautifully brings us to the next topic, which is like marketing and messaging around it, right? And I think so 2 things that I'm picking up from Tomer, which I think super important for us as well. So one thing is to validate that somebody is ready to buy your offer. And that is actually the key for your marketing messaging in the beginning. You are not building your brand. It's kind of like what majority of people think they need to do because they worked for big companies before, and they think what is the most important is to build my brand or like my personal brand or whatever that is. No, actually the most important thing is to validate there is customer out there who's ready to pay actual cash for what you're offering, right? So your marketing messaging in the beginning is all about validating your business idea.
As quick as possible.
As quick as possible, that your offer is actually workable. And then staying consistent on that. So that's the second point that I'm picking up from you. Because if you just do it once, and nobody came to you and you gave up, that's not going to work, right? Because I don't know, I don't know why people assume that's they just need to communicate once and people will come. But I don't know, even if you posted something on your Instagram stories or on your LinkedIn feed, right? People were maybe about to read it, and then I don't know, the dog barked and they turned around, and then their kids spilled something, their partner handed them a glass of wine, and their attention switched somewhere completely different, right? So they haven't even seen this thing, right? And you think the whole world saw your message and nobody's wants to pick you up on that, and it's a big drama, and then let's drop it and work on something else for another 5 weeks, right?
And I think there is even some official statistic. I'm not prepared enough to kind of know the number, but I think it was at least 5 to 10, maybe even, I don't remember. Times that somebody needs to hear your message.
13 touch points.
Needs
13 touch points people need in order to buy from you.
Right. And what I like to look at it, sometimes exactly perfect example of, you kind of communicated it once, and we were totally, guilty of doing this in the beginning, but just because you would rather die than to, be perceived as pushy and as somebody annoying that is sitting in the neck, and wanting somebody to buy. This is what we hear also from clients. I don't want to be perceived as salesy. I don't want to be perceived as pushy.
But if you think even of the biggest brands, Coca-Cola or whatever, there's still advertising. There's still ads everywhere, you go to a bar and there's Coca-Cola umbrellas, and they're everywhere. Even, that you have to keep showing up all the time, and you have to in different places and in different formats and in different ways, right? I mean,
and I like to see it more imagine you have this little cute pot, with soil, and you're putting a seed in it, you're planting a plant, and a flower, and you put the seed in. That's the first time when you are communicating about your offer or about what you're doing, right? Now you need to water it, and you need to watch it grow, and you need to water it even more so that it can grow to a point where it's ready to be then plucked, let's say. So that's the same, what happens in a customer mind. The first time they hear something, you're just planting a seed potentially, right? They need to hear more information about it to, first of all, understand if it's really interesting for them, if it's really solving, their problem. It might sound like something exciting, for the first time, but okay, learn more about it. And then also learn about you, learning to trust you, right? And there are different buying behaviors as well, right? So kind of, the impulsive buyers that are, they're hearing something. It might be the perfect day and the perfect time. And they're like, let's go for it. This is exactly what I need. But then you have others, and I think Tomer is a big example of it, that need to, sleep on it for like 2.5 months.
Do some research.
Exactly, back it all up until they're getting even close to making a buying decision. So let's say if you're speaking to such a person, you don't even support them in any way to be able to go towards that buying decision. And that's how we like to see it. It's basically a customer decision journey, right? And you have to help somebody get to the decision of making the right decision for them, that it's for them to invest into your offer. So, saying it once won't cut it.
100%.
Maybe just to add to this, because it's what you're saying is this consistency thing that you picked up on, right? And to stay out there and to plant the seed. I love that you use that example. We use it all the time, right? Because it's like not hunting for clients, but farming client in a way. It's like doesn't sound much better. But in a way, it's like the idea of like, it's not the one-off shot and you get some clients, but that's not really sustainable. That's not plannable, But if you plant lots of seeds, and when we say seeds, it's usually like they show you their data, they show you they're interested, they download a freebie, they sign up for a call.
Right.
Now you have them in your database. If you have a CRM not set up, set it up as fast as you can, so you keep track of people who are interested, and then you keep them nurtured, and eventually, only 3% of your audience is ready to buy right now. It's another statistic. Only 60% will ever buy. Over time, the other 40 will never buy. So you just know there's a certain percentages involved, and over time, if you grow more seeds, put more seeds in, more will be harvestable simultaneously over time. So this is like to make your business sustainable. I think that's almost like the next step of business building.
Next step. I think it's not that important in the beginning, because I think as you said, so there are 3% of people who are ready to buy from you. So you need to validate this 3% are actually ready to buy from you. But afterwards, you need to stay still consistent, right? Nurturing the other 60%, right? They need a bit of time and nurture in order to buy from you later. And it's basically like, I love thinking about it in a way that the way how you talk about your offers and how consistently you talk about your offers today determines how many clients you're going to have in a year from now. So if you don't start now, you're missing out on a year of having a business, So from this perspective, yes, but I think like to this 3%, because that's another thing why people give up, right? Like if they don't see the immediate result of signing these paying clients, right? Don't have this like shot of dopamine in their brain that actually it is working, right? Which gives them the possibility to continue doing. Yeah. So like we usually insist that people like post their offer and communicate their offer for at least 21 days. That's kind of like one sprint.
As a very clear sales-focused push, not as a brand building, not as a planting a seed, as a nurturing. This is all midterm, long-term strategy. But in the beginning, you just want to hardcore sell to the 3% to see if someone actually buys. Once they buy, you can build systems and the big comms plan and then communicate and nurture and water over time. But actually, in the very beginning, the mindset thing is, I want to build my brand and I want to build a long system. But in the very, very beginning, at least the way we talk about it always, just sell. And it's uncomfortable. People don't want to sell. And this is not how it's always going to be. Coca-Cola, they may not always make a very commercial offer. They may just show you a fun video and then you're like, Coca-Cola, so fun, I'll go. Because you know them, it's an established brand and it just brings you some good feelings with this brand association. But when you're just starting out, nobody associates much with you. Yeah. And you just need to test your offer until you...
That's true though.
And nobody cares. Because we always feel so scared to put a sales offer. Nobody cares. Like if it can help them, they're like, ooh, cool. If it doesn't help them, they move on. Like nobody spends like the whole day then, this Carsten guy, he pushed the sales offer again. He's so bad. As if they have nothing else to do.
Yeah, totally.
You're your biggest enemy eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally. I love what you're saying, because it again, and what Olga was earlier saying, it brings the focus again away from yourself onto your ideal client. And that's the best solution for fighting imposter syndrome, right? When you're starting out, you're feeling like an imposter. You might feel like, okay, I'm not good enough, not ready enough, not qualified enough, whatever it is. But then you're indeed focusing on you. And we need to really shift that and say, okay, what are you again bringing to the table? Why is it interesting for that person? And then indeed going for those 3%, and that might be sounding like very counterintuitive to many, right? Because they feel like they need to build their brand first, and they first need, you know, to build their presence and visibility and, you know, everything in the audience, and focus on, you know, all those other things that indeed are very good and strategic at some point, but it's not what will necessarily give you that first client.
And I think it's good that you say it again, because actually as part of this like 21 days that Olga mentioned earlier, where we get people to just push the sales, the first 7 days are more focused on establishing yourself and your story as an expert, so people can emotionally connect to you as a human, because they buy you in the beginning, especially if you offer services based on you, especially as a coach. And then in the second week to explain more the offer, in the third week to explain more, like to give more urgency and to say, hey, this is
counter objections.
I'm just counter objections as well. Exactly. Like why would I not buy? You know, you can ask yourself, like, if I saw this offer from me, like how would I challenge myself? And like you need to answer and speak to this and logically give reasons for why still to buy.
Nice.
But there's still the expert establishment that you mentioned. It's still there.
Yeah.
But at the back of that, there will be an offer.
Yeah, I think that's kind of similar, maybe, you know, just from the idea of what we're working with strategic content pillars, right? That's why, because we feel like when it comes to marketing your offer and stuff, we want to leverage social media, right? And kind of putting ourselves out there to the network that we do have, right? And sharing about, you know, the offer and the amazing value that, you know, somebody wants to sell, so a new coach, a new service provider. And then the question naturally comes, okay, what is it that I'm going to talk about? Like, you know, am I just going to say, okay, this is what I'm selling and this is what it's for? No, you want to kind of package it up in a way that it's actually creating really emotions, right? And that it speaks to the right person in the right moment in time. So I think maybe it's similar to what you're doing. Like in our strategic content pillars, we're looking into, okay, what exactly is the client transformation that you're addressing, right? And what is your solution to it? But then we're going very quickly into the core objections. So what is right now holding your ideal client away from, keeping them away from actually making that decision to invest, like whether it is an objection around the transformation, that they don't feel like they can do it, or, you know, they're not positioned, or is it that they feel they don't have the time or the finances or whatever to invest into it? Like we need to address those things, right? Again, to get them closer to the buying decision. And it's always has to be connected to that offer. Because I think one, you know, when we're talking about like marketing and social media marketing or content marketing mistakes, I think very often people are staying on a very inspirational level and kind of or educational level of like, okay, here's what you need to do and the 5 tips to do this, and look at, you know, how wonderful your life can look like, but then actually not making the connection to the offer and not giving them the call to action to take the next step.
And it's also not so much just, so when you want to offer value and basically kind of like give something educational or valuable to your audience, it's not so much about just offering value for the sake of value, but it's actually showing your expertise, showing that you know what you're talking about, you know your shit, and that people can already do something from what you tell them, and then they're like, this guy or this girl know exactly what it is.
Yes.
And so it's just not so much just about value for the sake of value. It's really, I want to prove myself that I'm an expert, that I know what I'm talking about.
And I think like this is like, especially in coaching industry, I hear this a lot, like from, I don't know, sales gurus, where it's like, just give value. It's like, this is the dumbest advice ever, because like if you just give value, like you're like an encyclopedia. So people will come in,
free advice,
just find the information they need, and then will like leave you, right?
Yeah.
Because like, why buy from you if you're already given all the value, you know? So it's actually, it's very different. It's exactly like Tomer said, it's about establishing your expertise and driving forward your authority and showing like, hey, like, even if you don't have paying clients yet, even if you haven't worked with anyone, if you don't have testimonials, you are the product of your own service, right? So if you were able to create this transformation for yourself, right, and you have the results that you're offering to people, you can lead with your own story. So show them how you are the expert, how you know how to do this, how you did X, Y, Z, and that brought you like the certain outcome, right? And then give them a CTA, so a call to action, to actually buy from you, to engage with you. Because if you're not very clear on what to do next, people don't do it, you know? Like, as again, like the moment they are confused or they don't know what exactly you're expecting them to do, they're out, you know, so you lost them.
And especially on the platforms that we use, like Instagram, for example, it's like, you know, it's you scroll, you know, and if you don't, you know, so if you look at it, you get something out of it maybe, but, you know, if there's not a clear next step, you know, your finger goes up and you're in the next video, the next thing, and, you know, the person is gone. It's like you really have just a few moments to kind of capture that person and get them to indeed do something, do something good for themselves, but also, in your benefit or, that works for your business.
And I think like maybe like the mindsets that's like we see helps people to do this switch from themselves onto the customer and actually like stop being freaked out about the whole sales part is, if you think about it, is offering like something to people that's like they really need to. Like in a way, I don't know, like last year, for example, like I had a functional burnout, right? And like my immune system went into like complete havoc. And I'm getting like eczema around my eyes, right? Like they flare up, they like, I don't know, they ooze, they're red, they're itchy, right? So if somebody in that moment was just there telling me like, hey, Olga, you know, I have the solution exactly for this thing, like I can help you, I would be like, thank God, you know? But if you know this, but you're holding it back to yourself and you are not telling the person that you can help them, you're the biggest asshole in the world, right? Because like, you know you can help them, but because you're like concerned about how you're going to look like and who's going to think what, you're not helping the people out there, right? So actually it's evil. So that for me, it's the other way around, right? Like if you have the solution, you can help people, like sales can be extremely valuable. Actually, sales is even more valuable than your offer. Because if you just show the path to people, and you give them the hope that there is a solution and it can work, that's already like more valuable than the solution itself, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not about being the best perceived doctor, but it's about curing as many people as possible. That's
Exactly.
What, that's what you need
Which
to
is
do.
again the focus shift from yourself to others and to serving. And I also wanted to just highlight, because we shifted from what you said to mindset, which was super relevant, but also I wanted to highlight, you know, giving people something, at least it sounded like from what you said, something practical in what you do, like hyper practical. For us, it's like this hyper practical. People do all these courses and things which are generic and they end up spending money and then they don't have anything in their hands. So even in your post, if you can make something super tiny, super practical, they can do something and they like some questions to ask yourself and they answer, and it really makes a click in their head. Like if it's really valuable exercise, this is what to talk about. And then also this specificity, right? Because it's like 5 tips to feel better. Like in the interviews, maybe they told you they feel, you know, like they cannot sleep, insomnia, whatever, right? And 5 tips to feel better may not catch them, but 5 tips to, you know, work against insomnia was like, again, using specific language from the customer in the way you title your post, in the way what you say in your posts. That is, again, something that resonates very quickly.
You know what? Let's put under this episode the link where people can download the video lesson about how to run customer interviews properly, so they actually get the good data from it.
And the cheat sheet?
And the cheat sheet, yes. And the cheat sheet with what questions to ask and how to translate this into a sales offer on the back of it.
Cool. Sounds good.
Sounds good? Okay.
And also, like, I think as we're like probably over our 10-minute per topic on this topic, like just like we already kind of started this transition on, it became
sales,
more and more sales. It moved a bit away from marketing messaging. I just kind of wrapped that up a little bit, but then moving into sales, selling, what does it mean to sell, feeling bad about sales, this mindset. Like, because when you put your posts out there and they resonate and people give you their data and you can now have a conversation with them, and then they're like, okay, that sounds interesting. Hey, Carsten, like, you know, like this offer that you're talking about, like, and they have a question or they express interest or they jump on a call with you, then you can still make everything wrong and make sure that you don't sell. So like, right? And it's scary. It's the scariest part, really. It's so, because especially when you're just starting, when you've already sold, you've seen transformations happen based on your product. You feel confident. You're like, hey, and you can still make mistakes then because you're too confident. But before that happens, what is it that you like give to people, like, so they, when this happens, they actually prepare, they don't act in a way that people feel turned off? Like, what if anything do you guys do usually
for sure
there?
So I think we're like just very practical tools. We're having our sales script, like something I think that gives people a guidance in the moment, but I think there is also a lot of prep work involved in kind of figuring out, okay, what are potentially the objections that somebody will come back to you. And eventually it's always around similar things. Like there will always be the most leading one is the financial objection. I don't have the money for this, or, you know, oh, this is more than I thought, or, you know, I have a vacation planned and I first focus on this and maybe later. So the time and money objections. So you can go like prepared into the interview, but what we like to do before is also do sales training like we do role plays. So we're actually really
Nice.
So we're actually really going into practicing. Okay, so let's run through this through the call, and we are then focusing, especially, like I'm then being always the, you know, the bad cop, the very difficult buyer. And I think that the mistake that, and when you were saying, Carsten, you can do everything to, you know, just make sure that you don't get the sale. And I think most of the time it's when you are just taking no for a no. It's like somebody says, oh, I'm not... I don't know. I will let you know. Okay, I will follow up with you maybe in like a year or never, you know, like this. So you don't have a exact follow-up process in place. You are afraid to ask questions. Also
but
about
this shouldn't
finances.
be misperceived as we're encouraging people to be pushy salesmen.
No.
Because that's not what is meant by that. It's more like... Yeah, people very often, they say no when they have not yet made a decision because they're not, you know, like, well, they can't say yes. They often say maybe, I'll think about it. And then that's something for sure, like an open door to continue. And sometimes they say no for a reason that might not be a legitimate reason. If you're putting yourself in their shoes where they actually have that problem, they actually need a solution, then, you know, then what is the real reason why not?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, you really have to kind of understand who you're talking to. Sometimes, you know, you get to talk to somebody and they're not your ideal client, they're not having that problem, they're not really there, and it's like, okay, they said no, okay, well, yeah, of course,
I agree.
know.
Yeah.
But so it's like not about trying to push somebody to do something.
Yeah,
that
and I
doesn't
think
help
coming
them.
back to that point, it's actually, you know, we tell our clients it's not your job to be the salesman, it's your job to be the detective, you know, on a sales call. Because what you have to figure out is is that person really having the problem? Are they looking to solve that problem, and can you help them solve the problem? And then it's more finding a solution together. Like if it's a yes, finances aside, right? Then how can we move on together so that we can make this work, right? How can we come to a solution or to a way that, you know, this is possible for you because I feel like you really want this, right? Then you're not coming from a point of, oh, I'm just doing everything I can to sell you into this. Because that's not the intention, right? It has to be like a comfortable decision that the person takes, but it's indeed more like helping them to figure out, is it the right decision for them? And if it is yes, then how can we remove the barrier so that you are able to invest into this because it's something that will help you.
And I think that this is key because a sales conversation is not getting a person to a yes. A sales conversation is helping the person to make a decision whether the solution that you are offering is the right solution for them, right? And this way, like all you do is basically being present with the person. You're asking them questions to understand whether it is actually a good solution for them, yes or no, whether it's a fit, right? And helping them kind of, it's in a way coaching them like to make a decision, right? You're not coaching them to buy or getting them to a yes or like pushing them into anything, right? And to the other point is like objections is the normal part of the process. Human brain is just wired like this. We will always first think about everything that might not work or might be wrong, right? But if the person has an objection, it means you haven't explained your solution properly, right? So if somebody's coming up with the objection, they say like, oh, I'll think about it. It means that there are objections that you haven't answered or they misunderstood you some way about the process or your methodology, whatever that is. So just staying curious about it, you know, like in a way, it's like, oh, I'll think about it. It's like, okay, but like, do you have any concerns, if any? Just ask me now, like, like, what's on your mind? Just staying curious, not like in a way, just like questioning it.
Yeah.
When people say like, oh, that's a lot, like you can even agree with them and say like, yes, of course, it's not like a very cheap product, like it is an expensive product. But what does it mean exactly? It is a lot. A lot for what specifically, right? So let them talk, like unravel it, kind of like look deeper, like behind that, and not. And I think like that's key. Not being afraid to just ask questions and be curious about it.
Yeah.
Just investigating how the person's brain works. And how do they make a decision?
Yeah. And I think if you're feeling like uneasy to go that way, to go that far and actually ask people about, their financial considerations, etc. That's what we hear, from clients, that they say, oh, but I don't know if, I can just ask and it feels not really comfortable, then ask for permission. It's the easiest way to, take away the uneasiness, the feeling that is awkward, just ask, oh, thank you so much for sharing. I totally understand that, as you said, that this is something that, is a premium price point. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about this, right? And then you kind of open the door for going into that conversation. And then if they say something else related to pricing, again, always validate, say, I totally understand that. Well, obviously, it has to be like, don't, it has to feel, of course, genuine, but it's kind of, meeting them where they are. It's kind of, taking that step towards them to say, I understand exactly where you're coming from and let's see how we can solve it. So can I ask you a few more things just to figure out how we could make this work?
Yes.
And that sparked also something else in my mind. It's also like preparing for that sales call or consultation, you could call it as well. And like something that we've implemented for our own funnel is that we have, before the sales call, we have a form that somebody fills in, and then we already get a lot of information. First of all, just to get to know them a little bit. But we also, one of the questions is, we ask, do you have the funds to invest right now? Like, and do you need, or would you need a payment plan? Or like, like where do you stand financially now? And that allows us to also kind of come into the call already prepared with the mindset and lead the call in such a way to focus maybe on the particular objections that they might have, like this, you don't, because sometimes calls like this, they could, like sometimes schedule it for half an hour, but, you kind of like think the person wants it, but then, it drags on and you get stories and you suddenly go for like an hour, so it's like, it's also, it helps you to kind of focus the conversation. That's one benefit, and also to just be prepared and come a bit more confident into there as well.
The finances is already out there as a question. They saw that question, they filled something out. That's just moving by itself. So they already did this, right? And they filled it out. So it's already out there. It's kind of like both parties already started talking. So it's not anymore this weird topic lingering in the background. And something that also was sparked from listening to you guys is like, okay, there's like certain things that we all have gone through now, and we're like, then you ask a question. But if I remember myself back then, it's freaking scary to ask a question about, may I talk? I don't want to talk about their finances. Like, I need to ask myself for permission first. So I know, I'm just, probably there's people out there, but it's like this mindset of like, before the call, like there's all these things you can like, which we talked about a lot now, like what kind of things to think about and do and not do. But even just like basic, like I'm just going there and I'm here to serve this person. They have some questions, I'm going to answer some questions. And I'm also the most qualified person if I believe my product is good.
Yeah.
And I understand my product, which in the beginning, it's sometimes more difficult because you don't understand your own product and service as well yet. But over time, you get to know it better and better. And then you're just there listening, asking questions, as you said. But the goal is like, I'm like trying to understand from curiosity, who are they? What do they want? Oh, you want to know this? Well, and you can tell your own story, how you got there. You can explain your method, just like a human being to a human being, trying to understand the situation and like, does it make sense? Does it not make sense?
Yeah.
How could it make sense? And then you can even speak to that openly, and it's a normal conversation. It's not like something script necessarily this and then I say that, and because then you become weird and it becomes uncomfortable. You don't want to go on a sales call even because you're like, I'm gonna have to have this uncomfortable situation. No, I'm just going there to answer questions and be there for them. And that's all. It's not about me. It's just like,
but I think like, it's key to keep in mind that nobody comes on a sales call not wanting to buy. So for me, like that was kind of like a revelation, because people will not spend their precious time on chatting to you for half an hour to an hour if they didn't come ready to buy. So if they don't convert, that's on you.
True, you
that's
already
actually
go
not
there.
on them. You go on there knowing they're ready to buy. So your only role there is to answer all their questions they have about the product and to show them like, yes, this is this feature. Like, yes, like this is something that potentially works for your situation, right? Or highlight the features that work for them. Like talking about like, I don't know, bonuses, if they have any questions, if they have any objections, answering that, right? But they are ready to buy. Otherwise, they would not spend the time, right? And it's kind of analyzing afterwards, even if the sale didn't happen, because like for me, I think that was the turning point. After the sales conversation, like if I have 100% responsibility and power to make a sale when people came, where in the conversation did I lose them? Like analyzing where I did not create the safety for them and the trust, right? And the belief I am the best person to help them. Where did I lose that? And where did I not provide the safety? And when I know exactly, next time I will do better. So don't brush it off with like, oh, they were just not ready to buy. This is bullshit. They were ready to buy. You just didn't explain your shit properly, right? So, and when we take this 100% responsibility, it becomes easier every time because then we know, like, by their body language, if they become defensive at some point, oh, somewhere I'm making them feel unsafe. So how can I bring back this safety for them? How can I show them, like, it's okay, I am the person, it is the product, right? Like, because otherwise, like, they go, like, they leave being unhelped, and you don't get paid, right? So it's a loss-loss, right? It's
In
not a
general, I
win-win.
think for this entire process that we talked about, from niche to like offer to marketing to closing, it's like having this experimentation, this laboratory coat on, right? And you just try stuff out. And the faster you try stuff out and the more curious you get about what didn't work, especially, and faster you iterate, the faster you get to something that works for everyone, including yourself, and then you can build systems and all of that. So that was one point. And then also the trust building, actually, it like a lot of people we both work with are coaches, and as a coach you learn to build rapport with the person. You acknowledge, you play back, you validate when there's feelings and frustrations coming up. Use this, clarify. They say, oh, I just don't know like how to sell. What do you mean with selling? You know, and then you can relate what you have to offer to exactly what they mean with selling. And you if you know your product and you're comfortable with that, you can then respond very knowledgeably. But using these skills to build rapport, to trust, and to also then to be able to respond in the most meaningful way.
Right.
Great, but I think like we're pretty much coming to the end of it, guys. So maybe like as we're wrapping this whole conversation up, like what are maybe like the key things or the key, I don't know, pearls of wisdom you would want to give to people who are just starting out with their business?
That question hits me right in the right moment now, because it was like through everything
Ready
that we
to
were
share
like,
the wisdom.
it's just coming out. There was one like thread now that I was like, okay, you know, we touched upon it in all the topics that we talked about. Now it's kind of also about putting your reputation and your ego aside, you know, and it's really like we said it, but it's focusing on the cure, on what you have to offer as the value to somebody else. Yeah, and just let go of all these, you know, like how am I going to show up? How will I be perceived? You know, it's really just let go of all that, like put all that aside. You're there to help people. Just be humble, you know. If people see you in that way, nobody's going to, you know, be mean to you. People are actually much nicer than you think, you know, like than you play in your mind that they might be. So it's like, just put all your ego aside and just come there to help and offer the great thing that the great gift that you have to offer to people.
Maybe make it even a challenge. Like, you know, if somebody is out here listening and thinking, oh, I would love to, but it's easier said than done, you know, maybe to say, okay, what about if you set yourself a 21-day challenge, and then you say, for those next 21 days, I will just, you know, put this perfectionism aside, that ego aside, and I'm just gonna full on focus on, if I was free of fear, if it was just about serving my ideal client, what would I say? What would I do? How would I show up? And then for those couple of days, do it. And I think it will become kind of automatic. And maybe just to add to this, like, you know, my maybe take on answering that question is don't assume that it's just hit or miss, that you have one shot at something and then you either did it or you failed, and then you ruined your chance on something or you missed that sale. Well, no, there is always a second try. There is always a third and a 53rd try, and you can always go back and try again.
We're on our 1093
try. You get a little better every time,
Exactly. So just that you will grow as you will do. So that's, I think, the most important thing, like to kind of take that action and know that you will repeat as you go on, and not be kind of this perfectionist of, okay, I need to get it right. And
I love that, and it's actually something in our business, because I was like, okay, it's not working, like it's scary, and I was like more the conservative person and the more like security-driven person. She is more like this risk taker, and no, but it's amazing because also she brought at some point this mindset, and she had this like a few times in our career as an own business where she just made decisions, and one of the decisions was like, I'm gonna make this business work. No matter when. I'll make it. It's not a question of whether or not. It's just a matter of when. And this is the dedication and mindset that you were speaking to in a way. Don't give up on the first, second, third, fourth, 50th, right? Keep going, and you will learn, and you will get better, and you will, as long as you keep that open mind. So that this was amazing, actually.
I love that. Look at that love letter here to you. No, I really love that, because sometimes I tell myself, okay, channel your inner Beyonce. It's like, Beyonce, she's so this, confident. What would my inner Beyonce do? And it's like, let's go for it, because that when you embody like just that energy in that moment in time, and it might be, just for this one story, to put your fears aside, like this Instagram story, and just go for it, and you will feel like you're already almost in it, like in this energy, living it, and then it's so much easier to believe that you can actually get there. So then it's indeed about making the commitment.
Yes, commitment and talk to customers. I think that's a very big highlight for me before I give you the final word here. But talk to customers. It's so easy if you niche down, just find them, talk to them, ask them questions, ask the same questions so you can compare. You can even throw to ChatGPT to give you the common denominator. Make sure, though, to not lose the way they say the words. Don't use the ChatGPT words, very important. And then base your offer on that, base your marketing on that. Like, use this knowledge, also the way you engage in sales conversations. So I think this is like such a hack, and it feels so far away. At least in my corporate life, it felt so far away because it's such a big team that's needed with so much analytics and so much money spent. But you can just talk to people as long as you choose people to work with who are near you, or who someone who knows a lot of those. So that's just maybe one big takeaway, and embracing this process that we just talked about, right? This step by step, because you cannot have the offer before you have the niche.
And I think the process is key here. So it's like learning to separate yourself and your skills from your process. It's like you have the process that leads to a certain outcome, right? And if the outcome is not what you want to have, it's not because you are bad or not good enough or whatever, like bullshit, right? It's also not because you're unskilled or like your program like doesn't work for anyone or nobody's interested. No, somewhere in this process of niching down, creating an offer, marketing your offer, and closing people, something didn't work exactly how you wanted. So it created a shitty outcome. So in order to create a different outcome, you just need to go back to your process and tweak and twist it a little bit and go as many times back until it delivers exactly the result that you want. It's not about you. It's not about your skills. It's not about anything. It's about your process not being perfect. So you just need to go back and perfect the process. That's it. And repeat it as many times as needed until the result is there.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Okay, it's a wrap.